let's talk about elderly people. Let's talk about their right to make free choice. Let's talk about elderly people in Florida and their rights to make choice of their destiny and how they do things. Okay, so let's start with the basic premise that most people that were raised somewhat decently, you will respect elderly people, right? Physically speaking, if you want to beat them up or abuse them, you could, right? But as a society, that's just a horrible thing to do. We don't live in a society where might makes right. Just because you're bigger, you get your way. That's not the way the world works in civilized society. I think we can agree to that. With elderly people, they are not the people they used to be, especially when they get to 90, let's say. I'm totally good with elderly people living the life they want and making choices that we don't necessarily agree with. But I think somewhere along the line, their rights to free choice is a little bit blurred. Some of you are going to say, no, they get all the rights. And some of you are going to say, no, we need to shut them down for their own safety and for their well-being. So I have to believe, depending on you, depending on the person listening to me talk, your opinion is going to be somewhere in between. I think most reasonable people is not to say, oh, elderly, just because you hit a certain age, that you don't get any say, right? You don't get any vote what happens in your life. I don't think anybody believes that, or any rational person. But at the same time, do they really get full rights to do anything they want? Let's say driving. I have learned these past couple of weeks, because a certain 90-year-old, their license had to be renewed. And I was working on this months ago. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, how hard can this be? I'm going to bring this elderly person into the DMV and have a vision test and get a new picture. And that's it, right? Well, obviously that hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. I was blindsided because it was discovered that the peripheral vision is extremely bad at the DMV level. Anybody who's been to the DMV know that they don't have an optometry setup. You look into the visor, at least in Florida, they run some basic tests and either you pass or you don't pass. Because I've always passed, I wear contact lenses in order to pass. Or people have glasses and it's generally no drama. But I've learned that for elderly people, especially if you're over 80 years old, I think it's every 6 years, that you have to come in and renew, and that you have to pass that vision exam, which I think is entirely reasonable law in the state of Florida, given that there's so many elderly people. And let's face it, if we're lucky, we'll all get there. Driving is a privilege. It is a privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege. And we have to be responsible, because we can kill people, right? Or damage people. We can damage the property. I'm going to cut through the story a little bit, because the central theme is about elderly people, not the specifics of this story. After many attempts to try to get a certain 90-year-old person to pass the exam, I come to the realization, after my attempts to get this person to pass the vision exam, this other person feels I'm incompetent. The way I'm handling it is incompetent. People are not explaining instructions right? But this 90-year-old person, for the better part of 50 years, 60, maybe 70, well, at least 60 years, right, has passed all the vision exams and apparently had enough ability to follow the instructions. But suddenly, wait a minute, it's everybody else's fault. Oh, no. You got to give the good instructions, because it's so complicated to pass a visual exam. Because only smart English-speaking people can pass a vision exam, right? Because we don't have people in our society that don't speak English, but they still manage to pass the vision exam. Getting 5 peripheral exam attempts is not good enough by tech, and we have an optometrist also supervise the test. So this is at least 8 tests, right? But that's not right? Because this is being mishandled. It's being mishandled. This person needs to drive. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. There's something that doesn't sound right, okay? I'm having a problem with all of these peripheral vision exams failing. But this person is insinuating that everybody else is at fault for this 90-year-old woman to not be able to drive. And not only that, she's going to instruct the optical staff, oh, we need to do this first, and that, because It's such a non-standard procedure, right? Vision exams are so uncommon. They need to be orchestrated. You need to tell them to do their jobs. This is what we're going to propose. And I'm thinking, gosh, that doesn't sound really good. And this person is saying, oh, you're using the wrong form. You got to use the more simpler form. You can't use the more complicated form. But the more complicated form was the one that was given specifically. I don't have a dog in this fight. I presume that DMV employees do this all day long. They give you something, they say to do it. I'm kind of inclined to kind of follow. I read the form and I get the meaning, so I don't see anything inappropriate about the form. But somehow I'm an idiot. We can't be using the more advanced form. We got to use the more simple form, except there's a little detail here. On both forms, an optometrist has to certify that there has to be 130 degrees of peripheral vision. It doesn't matter if you use the simple form or the more complicated form. Gosh, but we're going to do all this maneuvering. I communicate to this person, are we doing the right thing? Is this the right thing to do? Let's assume for a minute that all the DMV employees screwed it up, where did not get a pass 3 times, right? The 3 attempts. And let's assume that the optical technician screwed it up her 5 times. Let's assume that the optometrist also was incompetent or somehow was unable to the pass, right? Let's assume all of this is true. And she miraculously passes. Should this person be allowed to drive? Should this 90-year-old be allowed to drive? Now, to be fair, on the Florida DMV form, it says that it is not about age. It is not about age. You can't simply say that because somebody is a certain age, they can't drive. It doesn't work that way. That's what I read. Now, I think an argument can be made, and I think, in fact, it is sort of age-based, because in Florida, when you're 80 years old, the renewal rules are a little bit different. You got to do this every 6 years, not every 8 years. Should we be doing this if she miraculously passes? As I make this video, this is a very real dilemma that I'm facing right now. I have a problem with this 90-year-old being able to drive. I really do. I'm trying to have this rational discussion. Should we be doing this even if this person miraculously can pass a peripheral vision exam? Should she be? Not just because of the visual component, because of the D word in my last video, the dementia issue, which is my opinion, it is not diagnosed. And I'm thinking to myself, gee, this person who's attacking me is telling me how stupid I am and how incompetent I am and that this is being mishandled and everything, and I don't know the forms. Well, gee, I find a form where any citizen, medical professional, police officer, social worker, average person, you believe that a certain person needs to be medically evaluated. Now, the thing is, you can file this anonymously, but if I were to ever do it, especially to somebody I know, if I were to do it, I don't think I need to do it anonymously. I wouldn't be doing it for very trivial reasons. I'll sign my name. Doesn't have to be anonymous. I'll sign the damn thing. And I'll say this 90-year-old person probably needs to be medically evaluated. It's not going to be my call. Hypothetically, if the DMV decides that, hey, needs to be medically evaluated, there's going to be paperwork that's generated, there has to be a response. And I'm thinking to myself, this 90-year-old can't even pay bills anymore. She repeatedly says that a bill doesn't come in, yet I see stacks of utility bills. Like, oh, they never sent it to you, and they never sent to you. But yet, wait a minute, there's piles of it. Guess what? I think I'm going to believe my eyes, not the person telling me that the letters don't exist. So the point being is that this is not exclusively about age. It has to do with what you see as a non-medical person, what you are observing as a family member. What is it that you're observing? Do you actually have to have a medical professional to declare something that many people feel something is wrong? Something is grossly wrong. I'm using the example of the DMV and the ability to drive. Society in the state of Florida says no. Doesn't matter. They're going to look at the whole situation. Is the safety of the public at hand? Is the safety of that person at hand? And even if they're willing to kill themselves, society really frowns upon people that have suicidal tendencies or self-destructive tendencies. Society as a general rule, really doesn't like it. And that's why we don't have assistance to die, right? Except for a few states, which I think is bullshit. I think that if I want the right to die, I should be able to. But that is a whole different discussion. But in any case, elderly people, when they get to a certain point, it's not just the physicality. That is one element, but it's also their mental capacity. Can they take care of themselves? Can they cook for themselves? Can they maintain their affairs? Like, I don't want to get into too many of the variables, but let's just say that society at large in the state of Florida, at least using the Florida as an example, that's not allowed. And there is also the matter, from what I've been told, adult protective services. I think that elderly people who are not being cared for or don't have family members, I don't think that society will allow that to just happen with no intervention. I just don't think that elderly people, and we're all going to get there. I'm not a spring chicken myself. I am definitely not a spring chicken myself. I have been forced to think and learn about these things. Am I going to allow myself to become a 90-year-old, should I face that, to like not have a plan? We're just going to let things fly without any intervention. I don't know. I don't think we can do this. I don't think we can do this. The cost to society, the financial costs to the people, the mental costs are very, very high when you have elderly people claiming they have free will, but they can't assume the responsibilities for it. And it's generally my feeling that if you want the right, you want the freedom to make choice, you also have to be able to assume the responsibilities. All right, that's it for now. If you found this video helpful, give me a like and subscribe if you want to keep following my story. See you in my next video.